Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And one of my goals in this new year was I wanted to share some helpful tools with you guys, like some stuff that I use to help myself when like my panties are in a bunch or your knickers are in a twist or you're stressed out or freaking out or low energy or whatever, right? So along with being Oh my God, I always hate doing like the list of things, but along with being a yoga teacher, blah, 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 there's lots of different like certifications and things that I've learned and that I teach and I use with my clients, but I don't always talk about them. You know what I mean? So I am a certified breath coach. And even before that, I mean, when you're a yoga teacher for as long as I have been a yoga teacher, like since 1999, you learn about pranayama in yoga. And if you're listening to this and you're like, what is this? How is this helpful to me? Just like buckle up for safety. Stay in the car with me, right? Come for the drive because learning about breathing is such a powerful thing. I'm not going to get wicked in depth. My whole point is to be helpful, but also practical. I want any tool I share with you to be immediately applicable, like you can use it right away to help yourself out. And so today I'm just going to share a little bit about several different kinds of breathing practices that you can do that will help your ass, okay? So I'm going to break it down into a few different sections. I'm going to talk about it just a smidge, and then I'm going to like tell you the different ones, and then I will like kind of show you very quickly. And I will hopefully, if you're not somebody who watches the show on YouTube, even if you're just listening, my hope is to break it down simply enough that you can do it, as without having to see my face. Okay. So the first thing I want to tell you is that in yoga, so often we just think of like yoga as being like the asanas or the postures or the ways that we're moving our body. But there's 8 limbs to yoga, right? I'm not going to get into all the limbs, but I will tell you this, that pranayama, like breath control, breath practices, right? It's one of the 8 limbs of yoga. And think of it as a concentration practice that is focused on the breath. That's an easy, simple way. There's different ways to kind of break it down. Some people will say pranayama means like breath control, whatever. I just want to keep it as simple as possible. But prana means life or life force, right? It's that energy. So in other traditions, they might call it the ki or the chi, right? So the way that we breathe really makes a difference on our energy level. And a lot of times we'll say the quality of your breath affects the quality of your life. And I made some notes to myself here to just again to keep it as simple as possible. So pranayama or breathing, right, not only prepares you for meditation, it also decreases your heart rate. It can lower your blood pressure. It can lower your cortisol, your stress hormones, right, their levels. It can drop those down. There's also research that says that it can affect your vagal tone. And if you know anything about nervous system regulation, I mean, these days it's just like all over the place, right? You have undoubtedly probably have heard about the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is called the wandering nerve because it basically think of it as like being at the base of your brain and it runs down along, and I'm dragging my fingers down. It runs down both sides of your neck. And then it goes down into like all your major organs. So think about like your heart, your lungs, your intestines. This nerve, if I showed you a picture of it, it would blow your mind. And it plays a really big role in our resilience, in our stress reduction, and all these things. So when we have breathing techniques that allow us to help with vagal tone or to stimulate the vagus nerve, it helps us to kind of like regulate the nervous system, to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is relaxation response, rest and digest. It's like turning, I always think of it like a dial, right? There's a way to turn down the dial a little bit, right? To regulate, to downregulate. There's a way to whoop, send that sucker up, send us into sympathetic. That's what gets us into fight and flight and very reactive, right? Anxiety, all that stuff, stress. And then there's ways where we can kind of just set that dial for the middle. And that's kind of what we're getting at. And so I wanted to just give you a couple of different breathing techniques that will help you when your energy, when your mood, when your state of mind is maybe not in the most ideal place and we want to shift it. And knowing that you can shift your state of mind in your physiological, like through your physiological body. And that's the thing, the body and the mind are not separate, right? Those suckers are deeply intertwined, body, mind, and spirit. We cannot separate these things. So when we feel nervous or excited, our breath tends to be a little bit more shallow. But when we deepen the breath, the mind will start to follow. It'll start to slow down, right? The brain wave will just, like, that's how I think of it. It's like riding a wave, right? We want to ride a slower and gentler wave. There are times when we want to turn things up. So I'm gonna break it down like this, okay? So there are breaths that we can think of as being like down regulating. You might call those in different traditions, right? Different teachers use different language. So some people would call the down regulating ones like cold, right? They would say that we're turning it down, right? We're turning the temperature down. It's more cool, it's more cold. And some people might call that whiskey, right? If we're gonna, I'm just giving you different ways to think about this. So if you drink alcohol, which I'm not a fan of alcohol, I don't drink alcohol, but if you do, I'm just saying, right? It can have a relaxing effect, right? So this is what some people will think of it like a down-regulating, cooler whiskey, relaxing. That's tapping into the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, the relaxation response part of the nervous system. Then we have things that are stimulating, right? They bring us up. And those might be like when we get hot, it's like we're hot, we're on fire, right? It's like, let's go, let's go, let's go. That's, think of it. Some people might call that, instead of whiskey, they'd call that coffee, right? That caffeinated state. Okay. These are the stimulating breath practices. Okay, so we have the relaxing ones, we have the stimulating ones, and then we have kind of the middle of the road ones. These are more of the balancing ones, and these help us kind of stay in like an optimal state or return us to our optimal state. It will either help us if we've been really low, it might, balance us out. If we've been really high, again, it's going to bring us down and balance us out. So you can think of this, instead of like hot or cold, think of this as like room temp. You know what I mean? And instead of whiskey or coffee, think of it like water. Just nice. Water is good anytime. You know what I'm saying? There are certain times when you don't want to be pounding coffee. You don't want to get overstimulated, like right before bed. You know what I mean? But that might be great first thing in the morning when you're trying to get your ass in gear. Okay. There are times when you don't want to be more relaxed. It's like, okay, I need to like move things up, or I need to come back to balance. So it's unbelievable to think that, breathing exercises can do all of this for us. And why it matters is there are a ton of nervous system regulation tools out there. Okay. And we're going to talk about some of these over this next year. But things like tapping, right? Literally, emotional freedom technique, right? Sometimes called tapping. You're like tapping on different points on your body. And I'm mimicking it right now. I'm tapping on my head. I'm tapping on my forehead. I'm tapping under my eye with my fingers, right? And that's great. But there are times when it's like, you may not want to. I mean, I don't mind being weird. I tap all the time in public, but you might not want to be doing certain tools out in public because you're like, people are going to look at me funny, or they're going to think I'm weird, or like whatever, right? There are things like havening techniques where you like stroke your own arms and you can touch your face and like you can do all these things. And again, you might be like, I don't want to be doing those things. But here's the thing about the breath. The breath is free, right? We don't have to pay any money for it. It's available, most of us, right? Unless you have a respiratory illness or whatever, for most of us, or, a cancer of the lungs or something, reason why you can't breathe on your own, but most of us can, right? And it's always available to us. What we're usually lacking, though, is information, education, knowledge. And so I'm just like, hey, we're in times, and we have been in times for a long time, where the world is just a little extra fucking crazy and stressful and whatever. And I'm always like, what are the things that I can do? And whether it's like, before you have to like, if you have a business and you have to have a difficult conversation, or you have to do a speaking gig or be on a podcast, or that you have to be front facing and be out there, and that makes you anxious. It's like, oh, what breathing could I do to like calm me down? Maybe you're going through a lot right now and you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed out and just like right, tweaking like at your wit's end. Like, what can I do to like help me? Like da da da. So there's 1,000 reasons why a breath work practice, or just some knowing a couple of breaths could come in wicked handy. You can share them with your children, right? The only ones we want to be careful about is with the very stimulating breaths. And I'm only going to teach you one. I'm only going to tell you about one. And you want to be careful with those because sometimes that kind of breath work can be like it can increase your blood pressure. So you want to be careful if you have high blood pressure, pregnancy, glaucoma, if you have any kind of respiratory disease and stuff like that. You just want to be smart. All throughout history, people have said that, like, Westerners should not be doing long extended periods of pranayama on their own because they'll go crazy. Because breath work, right? Think about it. It shifts your energy, right? So if we're not careful and we're not doing it smart, right? So don't go overboard on these, right? These are just to be used. I think of it like instead of chugging, think like sip, sip, as my friend Linda Ty says. Just sip, sip on these suckers, okay? All right, so I'm going to teach you just a nice and easy balancing breath. Okay, I'm going to teach you a couple. These are some of my favorites. And I will, some of them can actually be in like both categories. But just as just a simple number one, a simple letting go breath, or the sighing breath, or what I sometimes call like the dramatic breath because it makes me laugh. Okay. And all you're going to do is if you can, right, you're going to inhale through your nose. And as you inhale, you let your shoulders go right up towards your earlobes. Just let your shoulders lift right up as you breathe in, right? Lift the shoulders up towards your ears. And then after you inhale through the nose, you exhale through the mouth and you drop your shoulders and you use sound like a big sighing breath. So if you've ever been in a relationship where you have a partner who wants you to know that they're unhappy with you, but they're not, or unhappy with you, or they're upset, or they want attention, or whatever. Your kids do this too. I call this kind of sometimes the teenager breath. So they're not quite slamming the cabinet doors and things like that, but they're just kind of sitting there and they're like, like they're just sighing and whatever, I kind of laugh. But really, part of that also is their nervous system trying to like help get some regulation. So that's a nice way to like calm down. Just a simple letting go sighing breath. You inhale through the nose, let your shoulders go up towards your ears, and then drop those suckers down right away. Breathe out through your mouth and use sound. Relax the jaw and use the sighing sound. That's a nice, simple, easy breath. Okay, number two, the physiological sigh. Okay, the physiological sigh. And what's so interesting is different teachers now, like, so Andrew Huberman has kind of made the physiological sigh kind of famous. But these are breath works that have been in yoga for thousands of years. I just have to give credit to the originators, right? But so in the physiological sigh, right, I'm going to describe it first, then I'll do it with you once in case you're watching this. And then you can practice it if you want. And if you're listening to this, right, just hit pause after each one of these. Give it a practice because I want you to figure out for yourself and to feel for yourself which ones feel best in your body. I'm just going to this is like throwing pasta at throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks for you. Okay. So the physiological sigh, this is when you take two, I would say, kind of quick and stacked inhales through your nose. And then you do one long exhale out through the mouth. Okay. And this is a variation on another fantastic breath, which I'll tell you, it's just even more simple than this one. Okay. So here's the deal. You're going to inhale twice through the nose. The first one is like it's like this. You inhale through the nose. And while retaining that breath, holding that breath in, you just fill it up a little bit more. Imagine you were just trying to expand your lungs just a teeny bit more. And you'll take another quick sip. So it sounds like this. The first one is this. So nice inhale through the nose and then top it off like you were topping off a little cup of water or whatever. Top it off with one more nice quick inhale. And then exhale out through your mouth twice as long. That twice as long is the important piece. So 2 inhales in through the nose, stacking on top of each other. And then twice as long exhale out through the mouth. This is the physiological sigh. That twice as long exhale is what activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Rest and digest, the downregulation, the relaxation response. That's what we want. Okay. So that's number 2, physiological sigh. Notice on that one, right? You're breathing in through the nose and you're exhaling out through the mouth. Okay. Same thing with the first one, the letting go breath. You're inhaling through the nose, you're exhaling out through the mouth. An even simpler version of that is just what you can call it the 2-1 breath, right? Which is, or the 1-2 breath, or whatever you want to do. Is just basically you're inhaling through the nose as deeply as you can, as long as you can, and then you exhale out through the mouth twice as long. That's it. It's an even more simple version. I will tell you this. When I'm about to have to speak in somebody's group or go on stage or even lead a yoga class or whatever, right? I really like to bring myself into a deeply kind of relaxed and, I'm like aware, I'm awake, but I like to just bring my nervous system down because my nervous system, unfortunately, still from a very traumatic childhood, I often say that my nervous system doesn't know the difference still between when I'm excited and when I'm scared. So even when I'm going to do something that I'm just wicked psyched about, my heart will be hammering, like all kinds of physiological responses will just start in my body. My body starts to go into fight and flight when I'm really in like excited delight, but it doesn't know the difference. So I use the physiological sigh and that just long inhale through the nose, twice as long exhale out through the mouth all the time, like every day. When I've had panic attacks, when I've gotten anxious, like I use breath so much. And again, it's free, it's available to us. Why not learn these things and put them into practice? The very least, if you don't need them, you can teach them and pass them on to somebody you love who does. And a little addition to that is when I do that big inhale in through the nose, twice as long exhale out through the mouth, I often use sound. And I'll sometimes while I'm making sound, also tap my chest like, ha, like that vibratory thing, right? These are my little quirky, weird things that work for me. And how I've discovered what works for me is I actually give it a shot and I practice it. I don't worry about looking weird or sounding weird or whatever. I'm like, this is what helps me. And if I'm in a more balanced and regulated state, I show up better for myself and everybody else. So, like, why not do them? Okay. So, that's like 3 different breaths that can be super duper helpful. Now, I'm going to give you just what we might call like a balancing breath, right? So those there were very much like bringing you into, and I'm going to, oh, actually, you know what? I'll teach you one more of these. I'll teach you one more of the, down regulating, of what we might call a relaxing breath. Okay. So Andrew Weil loves this breath. He talks about it all the time, and he calls it the 4-7-8 breath. And this technique is specifically, right, helpful for stress and anxiety. And this is what he says. If you know who Dr. Andrew Weil is, he says this: of all the techniques and remedies I've found over the years, the 4-7-8 breath is the most effective. I'm quoting him, is the most effective anti-anxiety, anti-stress thing you can do. The 4-7-8 breath is the most powerful method I've found to access the relaxation response. And it's the most powerful anti-anxiety measure I've ever come across. Okay, those are important words. Like, that's a big deal. So the 4-7-8 breathing, it slows down your heart rate. It lowers your blood pressure. He says it improves digestion, and it can, for some people, it can warm up your hands. And this is how you do it. Okay. You're going to breathe in. Number 1, this is like 4. Just think of this: 4-7-8. Okay. You're going to breathe in quietly through your nose to the count of 4. So I don't just go 1, 2, 3, 4. With me, I always go 1, 1,000, 2, like when we were kids, right? 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, whatever. So 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. So that's your breathe in through the nose to the count of 4. And then you hold the breath in. You hold your breath to the count of 7. And then you breathe the breath out. And we say forcibly. It's like, right? With some force, like, I don't know if my mic is picking it up, but if you see my face, I'm kind of making the thing with my lips. And then you forcefully breathe out through the mouth. That's that twice as long exhale again, right? For the count of 8. Now, what's happening though is you're doing that breath hold in between. So that's what makes it a little bit different than just breathing in and then exhaling twice as long, right? This is you breathe in quietly again through the nose, count of 4, hold the breath in to the count of 7, and then forcefully think of like you're aggressively blowing through a straw or something, right? Forcefully blowing out through the mouth for the count of 8. And he says you can do this twice a day. He says do it 4 times, like 4 cycles of this. He says after 1 month, right, you can go up to 8 breath cycles max, though. That's the maximum, but don't stop there. Build up gradually, please. And he says it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to really notice real effects. But I will tell you this. When I have done this sitting in my car right before I'm about to go into a place or whatever, when I've been feeling stressed or anxious or whatever, I do this like 4 times along with some other tools like tapping, whatever, and other things I'll share with you as the year goes on. And I have found it is incredibly, incredibly helpful. Okay. So that's the 4, 7, 8 breath. And it's a rapid state. You're trying to change your mental state and your physiological state. And the breath is one of the fastest ways that we can do this. Okay. And again, like I said, it's available to us. It's right there. It's just like whoever really taught us how to breathe. Nobody really sat us down and said, oh, you're feeling stressed. What do they say? Take a breath, relax, right? Like they say it sarcastically. Calm down. Like when you're worked up, they say calm down, but they don't teach you how to calm yourself down. So from my heart to yours, I'm sharing these pranayama practices and hopefully they will be helpful to you. Okay, let's talk about a nice balancing breath. Think what we might call a water breath. Okay, so think of this like when you want to bring yourself back to that optimal state where maybe if you've been too high or too low, this is going to bring you back to the middle. A lot of times I'll use like a balancing breath like this. Like if my yoga students are coming out of Shavasana, right? That final relaxation at the end of class. Okay, well, they're going from this state where they were just fully surrendered on their back, some people falling asleep, right? Whatever. And then I'm asking them to come out of that state and to bring themselves back up to a seated position. Well, yeah. And then right after that, they got to go drive a car, like operate heavy machinery. So I always like to offer like a nice little balancing breath or something to bring them back to like an optimal state of awareness so that they can function. So they're shifting out of that really downregulated state. So that's a good example of when you might want to use it. But there's lots of times, right, when maybe you just want to do a breath, but you don't want to get overstimulated and you don't want to like go down. You just want to kind of bring yourself to the middle. Okay, room temperature, as we would say. Okay, so I want you to imagine, for those of you who are visual people, because this is really helpful with what you can call this box breathing or 4x4 breath. 4x4 breathing. Some people call it square breathing. I mean, it's known by a lot of different names. Excuse me. So visualize in your mind or imagine in your mind a box, like literally just a 4-sided square box. Okay. And if it helps you to focus, because some people will sometimes lose where they are in a practice, this is just very simple. So imagine just if you're tracing, and I'm doing this with my hand online, if you're watching the show, you can see, just imagine you're going across the top of a box. That's your inhale. And you're going to inhale to the count of 4 across the top. Then you're going to hold the breath. So imagine you're going down the side of the box. You're going to hold the breath in for the count of 4. Then imagine you're coming across the bottom of the box. You're going to exhale out to the count of 4. And then you're going to hold the breath out. Imagine you're coming back up to the top, the other side. You're going to hold the breath out to the count of 4. Okay? So again, how you do box breathing, square breathing, 4x4 breathing. You inhale, right? And I like to do this through the nose. You inhale through your nose, count of 4. Hold in the breath for the count of 4. Exhale out through the nose to the count of 4. And then hold the breath out, meaning don't take another breath in, right? For the count of 4. And then you do it again. So again, inhale through the nose, count of 4, hold the breath in, count of 4, exhale out through the nose, count of 4, and then hold the breath out for the count of 4. That's box breathing. And you can just, again, use the image of a box that has four sides. And it's been described that, like I said, remember how I said at the beginning, these breath practices can be used or can be labeled both things. So this could be seen as a nice balancing breath, but for some people, it will be a breath that is bringing you down from being anxious or being stressed. Also, because it's if you're using the image of a box, you're concentrating your mind into the present moment. You're focusing on your breath. So your mind is not running wild with all of its worries and what ifs and worst case scenarios, right? You're right in the present moment. So when you get anxious or stressed, your body is basically preparing to confront danger, right? So your muscles might get tense and your breathing becomes shallow. So doing this when we're actually, physically and mentally putting our focus on doing a little bit longer breath and being very intentional and specific, that also can help us. And there was a 2023, I just wrote this down, a 2023 study of breathing exercises that included box breathing. And it suggested in its outcomes that daily 5-minute breath work can reduce anxiety and improve mood. And that there was not only an improvement in mood, but there was a change in physiological responses. And some people say for them, it is more effective even than just doing mindfulness meditation. To me, breath work is a meditation if we're taking that temporary moment to really focus on our breathing in through the nose or breathing out through the mouth or whatever. It forces us to be present, right? We're just not, because we take the breath for granted because it's an automated system in our body. We just assume, like, we don't have to, we go to bed, we go to sleep, we're not thinking about breathing. I mean, the only time you're thinking about breathing when you're in bed is when your nose is stuffed up and you can't friggin' breathe. And, right, we know too, the nose is designed for breathing, right? We have the two nasal passages. They're lined with little bits of hair. Those hairs filtrate out the pollutants in the environment, and it warms the air and it makes the air a little more moist so that the lungs and the body can receive the oxygen better, right? So the nose is the breathing device. So many people are mouth breathers, and it shows and it affects them. So if we can learn to be intentional with our breathing, and and a lot of people are doing like their mouth taping at night in bed. They're really trying to train themselves to breathe through the nose. So they use the strips to open up their nasal passages. Some of them have the little plugs that go in the nose. I'm widening out my nostrils with my fingertips a little bit, right? They widen their nostrils, they tape their mouths. Because if you haven't read the book, I think it's James Nestor's book, Breath. I should have brought it upstairs I think it's up here somewhere. I think it's James Nestor's book, Breath, or Breathe. But in that book, he talks all about this stuff, right? But these are just simple things that you can do. Okay. So you've learned a bunch of relaxing breaths. You've learned just now a balancing breath. And then the last one I'm going to teach you is a stimulating breath. But remember, I have to remind you, we don't want to go crazy with the stimulating breaths, right? Especially, again, if you're pregnant, you have high blood pressure, you have glaucoma, you have respiratory illnesses, you want to be smart about this stuff, okay? So in Kripalu Yoga, we have a breath that we call breath of joy. I have seen it in other yoga traditions where they do different things, where they're putting their arms in the air and they're making sounds and they're doing all kinds of things, right? This to me is the simple one. It's the one that I've been doing for forever, and it's the one that I love. So again, I'm going to describe it first. And then if you're watching this, I will show it to you. I'll just kind of stand up away from my mic. I'll just have to talk a little louder and I'll describe it to you. Okay. So this breath is stimulating because what you're doing is kind of like the physiological sigh. You are stacking inhale breaths on top of each other through your nose. And then you have a big like forceful exhale out through your mouth with sound. Okay. So imagine that you're standing up and your arms are just down by your side. Okay. When you take that first little sip of air through your nose, it's just a quick little sharp little intake of air. And while you're doing that, though, your arms are moving from being down by your sides up to shoulder height. So as you inhale, you swing your arms up to shoulder height in front of you. So you know how like a zombie would walk, or we would be like when somebody is hypnotized and they walk with their arms out in front of them, right? Like in Scooby-Doo, right? That's the first position. You inhale your arms both up in front of you at about shoulder height. That's that quick, and that is paired with that quick inhale. You hold that breath in, and then you let your arms swing down and come up out to the sides at your body, like the letter T, shoulder height as well. That's the second sip of air. And then you inhale them all the way up over, they swing down, right? So it's like, and then they inhale all the way up by your ears, like touchdown. That's that first sip of, that's that third sip of inhale. That's stacked on top. And then so you basically just went like this, right? You just stack 3 breaths in. And now you have that big letting go, and you bend your knees. So you bend your knees a little bit. You sweep your arms down, and you forcefully blow the air out with a ha sound, like a forceful, like ha, right? So again, I'm going to bring it to you one time. So you inhale. I'll stand up and do this one. And I don't mean to yell at you guys. I'm going to talk kind of loud. Okay. So you inhale like this, to the front, to the side, all the way up like touchdown. And then you bend the knees and go ha. And you fold forward a little bit and you blow out the breath. This is a highly stimulating practice. So again, you want to be smart about it. You want to be moderate with it. When I teach breath of joy in my yoga classes, people afterwards will say they feel like they're buzzing. They feel like they're tingling. Heat has come up in their body. Their energy has risen. They feel more awake, more alive. And I'll jokingly say to them, who needs coffee in the morning when you have breath of joy, right? Who needs drugs to get high when you have breath of joy? Because you can really stimulate your nervous system. So this is not something that we want to do late at night, right? Like right before bed. This is something you would do like in the morning, or maybe let's say, like around 3 o'clock in the afternoon when you start to get a little sleepy and you want to reach for something sugary or chocolatey or some caffeine or some excuse me, some beverage that's going to stimulate your nervous system. Instead, you could just do this would be considered like a coffee breath, right? It stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, and it's kind of like that excitement effect, right? It kind of brings you up. So remember, let's go back over these again. The water breathing, we'll do the whiskey breathing, or the middle, as I would call it. I put all these names down so I wouldn't forget myself, because I get a little all over the place. I get excited, I get a little all over the place. So things that are down regulating and relaxing, right? What some people, I think it's Lucas Rockwood from Yoga Body, who calls it the whiskey breath, right? And this is when we want to bring ourselves to the parasympathetic. We want to down regulate, we want to relax, or we want to induce sleep, right? This is when we would use that breath. And it can be really, really helpful. Okay. When you want to just do that balancing breath, right? That's when you might do the 4-4-4-4. A very simple balancing breath also that I do in yoga sometimes is you breathe in through the nose, count of 4, and simply exhale out through the nose, count of 4. In and out through the nose, count of 4 each way, right? That's a nice balancing breath. Think of that like room temperature. Think about that like water, right? It brings you back to center. So whether you've been a little low, a little high, it just brings you right back to your optimal state. And then you have the really rejuvenating ones, right? The ones that are stimulating, the upregulating ones, the coffee, we call it coffee, we can call it stimulating, but that's the one that activates the sympathetic nervous system. Gives you that kind of like excitement effect. And we don't want to go crazy with that one. And that's the one, right? So we think of it like this. When we do a balancing breath, that's always healthy. That's always good. That's fine. You can do it anytime. It helps us to like be in a state of well-being and adapt to life situations, right? It keeps us resilient. It keeps us like balanced. It's really good, right? There are times when we really want to bring our anxiety or our stress levels or whatever down. And so the calming breaths, think of it like that. They're really good. The relaxing breaths, those are really good right before you're going to bed, when you're trying to just like kind of drop in and relax and bring yourself from an overstimulated place. And then the coffee breath, you do not want to do it too often. Okay. You can do it again to the start of your day, at the start of your day, and then maybe in the afternoon around 3 p.m. when you start to get a little and you reach for some sugar. You know what I'm saying? You can do that instead. And I'll just tell you this, like breath work has made a really big difference in my life. I teach it with all of my clients, right? Who, especially clients who are stress prone or anxiety prone or whatever. I just say, here's some things like the very basics, like let's just start here. These things can be very helpful. But here's the thing with any tool, it only works if you work it. And you won't think to reach for the tool if you're not accustomed to using it and you forget that you even have it. And that's true about like pretty much any kind of tool that you have. Is that, so often people will say, like, what can I do for this? And I'm like, remember when I taught you that thing, like, like 5, 8 months ago, right? So we have to, how do I say, put these tools in rotation, I guess is what I'm saying. So that when you get knocked off balance, when you're stressed out of your mind, when you're overstimulated, you can remember, oh yeah, because when we get in a fight or flight state, the front of our brain where we make our good decisions and our conscious thinking, it goes offline. It's not really available to us. But if something is already deeply ingrained as a habit, and what I mean by that is don't wait to use it until you need it, like need it. Practice it. Put a breath work little practice somewhere into your life, into your routine, so that your nervous system is already benefiting from it. And then if you do happen to get thrown off kilter, you know exactly what to reach for to help you bring yourself back to a more balanced state, a more like cozy, resilient, making good choices. You know what I'm saying? So you're not flying off the handle and doing shit you're going to regret or saying stuff you're going to regret later. Okay. I hope that you stuck around for this, and I hope it was helpful in some way. That's always my goal, right? Is to spread a little more love in the world, to share stuff that's helpful for you, and stuff that I actually use myself, right? I'm not just regurgitating this shit. This is stuff that I know has been incredibly beneficial for me, and now I'm just passing it off to you because I love you. Okay, so wherever you go in your day, right? Take these tools right in your back pocket, maybe share it with somebody, okay? But I always say, make sure you're sharing the correct information. Don't just wing it, right? Make sure, especially with these kind of practices, just not enough information can be dangerous. You know what I'm saying? So be smart about it. But wherever you go, may you leave. And I don't know, should I get a new sign off for 2026? I don't know. I've been saying this forever, but wherever you go, may you leave the animals and yourself and the other people and the planet, right? The environment better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you be a blessing. Bye.